With David, we went back again in 2018 to serve in Dove's Wings again for another 2 weeks. And that time was really hard because I knew then that that the doors were opening for us to bring Alex home, but it wasn't yet. It was amazing going back because we could pick up on all the relationships with the IEs. The IEs were really happy to see us. They knew us. It felt like we could kind of hit the ground running. We were able to kind of get in and start doing stuff quickly. They had questions already for us in terms of what they could do with different children. They knew what we could bring to the table. So we went back in 2019 with all of us as a family and went and had the privilege of collecting Alex and Wendy actually got to hand him over to us, which was such a privilege. You know, she's seen him start his journey with Dove's Wings, and she got to hand him over to us and see him join our family, which was a real privilege to have her give him to us, you know, as it were, and for him to see that kind of transference of, you know, you're leaving the safety of Dove's Wings and you're joining the safety of our family.
Did Alex remember you and Ariane?
He did. So, you know, I don't know if you can see on the camera this mole.
Yeah.
On my cheek. I've always hated this mole. But from our first visit to Dove's Wings, Alex really fixated on this. And he used to sit on my lap and play with this mole on my face. And I've got another smaller one, two smaller ones up here. And when we went the second time, there was definitely familiarity there. He remembered, you know, I think the blonde hair helps as well. But he kind of immediately went to my moles. And so when we left him in 2018, I really prayed that there would be familiarity there again for him, because obviously, you know, a year in a child's life when they're so young is a lot.
Yeah.
There's no denying that day for him was a traumatic day. You know, he was, it's got to be, you know, and you could see when he arrived that he was very anxious. You know, how do you comprehend that you are leaving everything that you have known and going to a different country, you know, but there was definitely, you know, a familiarity. The authorities gave us time to sit on the floor together and allow Alex to move from her arms to my arms. And so by the time she left, he was in my arms, and there was a sense of safety there, you know, and he was touching my face, he was playing with my mole, and so I think there was that sense of familiarity in the midst of what must have been traumatic for him. So we had to be there at least 2 weeks. We had been warned that it may take longer than that, and we might have to reschedule our flights. But thankfully, it was all done within the 2 weeks.
What does having Alex in your family look like now? How has that changed your lives? And how has it changed Alex and Harry?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, you know, we had kind of had a couple of years of getting used to having two teenagers in the house. And, you know, so we were used to doing life in a very different way. You know, we didn't have to be involved so much in the day-to-day, like get up and get them ready for school, you know. So getting used to a very young child, you know, when Alex came home, he was 3.5. And, you know, he does have additional needs. So he was, you know, they call it parenting plus, it's a kind of the normal level of, what you would need to do for a 3-year-old, but even more so when you kind of help them to settle into a new home. And, with Alex, it was a new culture, a new home, a new language.
Yeah.
Everything was so different for him, all the smells, the aromas of, my cooking. I had learned some Chinese cooking, but I'm sure it was nowhere near what the Aussies looked like. They were amazing with their cooking. And very different for us as a family, because we had to adjust to having a little one in the house again. And just our choice of activity of, how we did life together on the weekends, was very different. But the girls had been really well prepared for, we were very fortunate. We had an amazing social worker who was just really loves our family. Ours was amazing, and had prepared us and helped us in terms of, just ways to think about what life would look like with Alex joining us. I think for some people, they just think like, oh, amazing, you're adopting this child, and like, wow, that's incredible. That's just it's going to be so awesome. And it is, that I would never, ever in a million years go back to life pre-Alex. He has enriched our lives beyond, people often say to us like, oh, Alex is so lucky. But we are the lucky ones. We have been blessed beyond measure. It hasn't been easy. We've had to be very therapeutic in our parenting. We parent in a very different way to how we initially parented our girls, because there's so much more to consider for him. We have to be mindful of what he's been through and the changes that he's been through. He joined our family with very little Mandarin, so he could understand Mandarin, but he didn't have much spoken Mandarin. And so we had learnt a little bit of Mandarin just to help him in the kind of the routine things, but we were told that actually in terms of us loving him, it was important that we loved him in our mother language, which was English, So in terms of us nurturing him, we couldn't try to do that in Mandarin and have the same level of intimacy, because we'd have to be thinking so much about the language that it would take away from some of the intimacy we were able to give him. We learnt some Makaton with him. We had, in some of our trips to Dove's Wings, we had started teaching the Ais there Makaton for things like drinking, going to the toilet, so that would be a common language that they could take to their forever families, and for a lot of the children, they delayed, and so some of their language skills aren't yet there. Their spoken language skills weren't yet there, and Makaton kind of closes that gap, So we had some Makaton which he picked up incredibly quickly. He just lapped it up. He just loved it, and I think it was some familiarity with the Ais and from Dove's Wings as well. He's now 5. His language skills are absolutely amazing. I think we've had to work very hard giving him emotional language as well. So he's come such a long way. And he just adds to our lives, and everywhere he goes. I mean, we've been in a very different year, but everybody that he's come into contact with, they're like, this boy is a miracle. And everywhere we go, that's the words that we hear. This boy is a miracle. The pediatrician that's been involved in him has said, this boy is a miracle. He shouldn't be doing this well. But he is. He's thriving.